Hi, my name is Arun and you have started listening to my YouTube show, AI with Arun Show. So today, we're extremely honored and privileged to welcome Abhishek Bal from JetLearn as a program. So very quick intros on Abhishek before we jump into the discussion with him. So let me talk about JetLearn first, the company that Abhishek founded. So JetLearn is an online learning platform that specializes in teaching children from ages 5 to 16 on how to code, develop skills, and in particular focusing on new age technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, Web 3.0. Here's one interesting thing that I found about this company when I was doing my research. In Jan 2024, essentially this year, a couple of months ago, JetLearn partnered with Dream School Foundation and Donate and R Explorer Academy to bring coding to underserved communities. Now, how fascinating can that be? Here's someone who is not just thinking about just taking coding to anybody, but especially looking at underserved communities, and that was something that is very, very touching, Abhishek. So, thank you for doing that. Now, like as you can imagine, this initiative is focuses on making these programs more accessible and promote industry inclusivity in the field of tech education. So that's about JetLearn. And Abhishek, who is our special guest today, he is the founder and CEO of this company, JetLearn. He founded this company in 2020. Abhishek really saw a gap that he wanted to bridge between the way the schools function in terms of their lack of exposure to the children in the schools in terms of their new age tech skills. And Abhishek really wanted to fill that gap. And that is what led to founding of this company in 2020. Abhishek is an IIT Kharagpur graduate. He has two patents in AI, so very, very distinguished. And he was previously the European Union GM of a Silicon Valley startup company called AutoGrid. And Abhishek is based in Amsterdam. So Abhishek, thank you so much for making this call. And I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks, Arun. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Great, great. So Abhishek, let's start by talking about your personal life, your personal journey, and how that has been, how that has shaped you. So you went to IIT Kharagpur, then you went to INSEAD. How has that looked so far for you?
No, I think education has always been very close to my heart. And if I look back, I still remember I had this when I was in standard eighth class. I had this very inspiring physics teacher. Right before that, I was an average student, and but this physics teacher really inspired me, and and that is what kind of motivated me to start excelling in academics, to improve in physics. I also needed to learn a bit of maths, and pretty much just because of that inspirational teacher, I would say I cleared the JE and got into IIT Kharagpur. Right. So since then, I have always been fascinated uh, by a couple of things regarding education. I think one is the power of an inspirational teacher, right? How that can really affect the trajectory of somebody's life. I think the second is, if I look back, it's also the early childhood, right? We think, we need. I actually studied from Nobel Prize winners also,
Wow.
but even then, I remember that early childhood teacher more. I think she had a bigger impact. Just think about it, right? If you change the direction at a early stage of anything, you'll end up somewhere. Versus if you go later and then you change the direction, it just takes a lot more effort to reach that destination, right? So I think that's what kind of has been my motivation. How can I do something, whatever that is, to impact uh, you know uh, kids, teens at an early age, so that the compounding effect, this change in direction, will have a much bigger impact if it's done at an early age.
No,
So
that's hmm?
yeah, so I think that's pretty much been my passion for a long time. I mean, I had a good career, I would say, in a couple of Silicon Valley companies, helped them expand into Europe. But my fascination has always been in the education space. I also started, teaching like a guest professor at INSEAD a few years ago, and but this passion is what kind of led me to found JetLearn 3 years ago. And the mission behind JetLearn, as you rightly mentioned, is how to give kids and teens a solid foundation in technology, so they start seeing AI, robotics, programming as a way to create new things as a superpower to solve problems and do it at scale, right? Uh, in the beginning, we make it super fun for kids, but these are the kids who in 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, will be moving humankind forward, be it exploring new frontiers in medicine or, developing space travel, right? And just think about it. There are nearly 1.5 billion kids of school age right now globally, right? So there's this huge, I would say, gap and opportunity to make an impact, right? You mentioned, we are a startup, we are a for-profit organization, so we have our business model also where we teach thousands and thousands of learners in schools, outside of schools. But as you mentioned, we also partner with a bunch of non-profit organizations in India, in Africa, where we also, uh, let's say, donate our time and our intellectual property to impact, make it as big as impact as possible, right? 1.5 billion kids are there who need what we do. So we're still taking one or two steps in our journey, and yeah, there's a lot more to be done.
Yeah. No, that's great, Abhishek. I liked how, how your physics teacher influenced you to think big. You're right. There are so many teachers that we have in our lives, and if we don't catch it early, it becomes even more harder at the later point in time. To sort of look back. But Abhishek, if you were to look back, right in your life career, you have had such a good journey. You said you're an average student, but then you sort of moved up the ladder of academic progression. What advice would you have for a younger self if you were to go back like 20, 20, 25, 30 years ago?
Mhm. 20, 30 years ago. Wow. Okay, good question. I have always been about inspiration and role models. So, and I would advise this for everybody at any age, find a role model or more than one maybe, and that will just increase anyone's confidence. And if somebody else has done it and you want to get there, then you have a path, right? I mean, everybody starts off from pretty much where I am or where you are, right? So I think my advice to myself and to everybody else at any age has always been, find a role model or two and see what they have done. Everybody has challenges, obstacles, but if you can find that right person who has overcome them, that gives you the path and that yeah, ability to first start and then overcome whatever comes your way.
So that is so phenomenal, Vivek, because I personally have had role models in my own life, and when I was younger, and let's say it would be a difficult situation, I would always ask myself, what would my role model? And they have changed over a period of time. First, they were teachers, and then as I started working, there were more my managers or people who are several years superior to me, or maybe CEOs of different kinds of companies. And I've
Mhm.
always sort of tried to put myself in their shoes and said, what would that person have done? So that role model, having that role model, and trying to emulate what they would have done is great advice for people.
If I have to add one thing, right now my role model in business is Richard Branson.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
his some very cool brands is taken up very traditional industries, make them cool and resonate with customers a lot. So I actually once gate crashed a conference in San Francisco to hear Richard Branson speak live. So
Oh, that's fascinating. So was
that
that
was
purpose, or did you get yourself invited to that show, or how was it?
no, I pretty much gate crashed. Yeah, so I kind of he was speaking at a conference. And I thought, okay, somehow I have to. I've read all his books. I follow him on LinkedIn and all, but I thought I need to see this person in person. So I think the impact will be bigger. So I actually somehow managed to get into that conference without actually being invited. It was a closed industry conference, so it was an invite only, and I was not invited. But still, there's a will, there's a way. I think that's what I read from Richard Branson also.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Mhm.
When you intend to do something, somehow it looks like all of nature is trying to come together to make it happen. So where there is a will, there is indeed a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great, Abhishek. So we'll switch gears a little bit, right? So thank you for telling us about, and the viewers about your personal self, and to all the listeners out there, whether you're young or at any point in time in your life, as Abhishek said, it's always great to have role models in your life, to find that someone who is around you, near you, who you can maybe touch, feel, or like Abhishek said, great trash to somewhere, right, where your role models are, and those would be great things to learn from them and get inspired from them. So Abhishek, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So Abhishek, we'll switch gears a little bit. So let's talk about JetLearn now. Right, we did some research about what the company does, but really, what was maybe one or two very deep, very impactful incidents that happened in your life, which made you feel like, man, I have to do something. I have to find this company, JetLearn. What were those incidents?
So I think it's been a long journey, So as I told you, I was describing before, I had this fascination for education right from day one, right? It has had such a big impact on my trajectory. I've had great learning experiences. I think getting into IIT pretty much opened all the doors for me, right? I've lived in 5 different countries, worked in some cool companies, met a lot of interesting people in my life. But all the doors were pretty much open because I got into IIT, which was again enabled by this inspirational teacher. So my fascination has always been this. So last 20 years, I've always been doing something on the side to kind of nurture this passion and give it an outlet, be it teaching at through charities or uh, for some time I taught for the GMAT just as a hobby. Then I started teaching as a guest professor at INSEAD 5-7 years ago. So I think founding JetLearn was kind of the genesis of two things. One is that, yeah, I knew in my life that I would do something in the education space. That was my calling, so to say. The second thing is, I started seeing a lot of gaps after talking to hundreds of people in the education system, right? In last few months or last 1 year, you've seen that AI has pretty much changed the world, right? Your podcast is called AI. But when do you think kids will start learning about these things in school?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe a decade later, but kids who are in school right now will never learn it, right? So I think that's the gap. I started seeing that uh, you know the school curriculum is heavily very bureaucratic. It takes 5 even 10 years to update, and in today's world, uh, if I take a slightly harsher stance, I would say that schools are preparing kids for the jobs of yesterday, not even today, and forget about the jobs of tomorrow. Schools do an important job. There's a social aspect to it, the foundational aspect to it, but then there's some specialized stuff which uh, which schools will never be able to teach because of the bureaucracy of the curriculum, the lack of highly trained teachers. So that's where companies like JetLearn can fill that gap and make sure. No, I strongly believe that being conversant with technology is as important as learning to read and write. It's a foundational skill. Anybody who does not have it is going to be left behind, right? So that was pretty much the mission of JetLearn, right? How do we give a foundation and but do it in a very fun way for younger kids for them to start seeing technology as this new superpower, whatever they do in the future, whether they become a software engineer or the next Elon Musk, or even if they want to become a TikTok influencer, right?
Hmm.
Just being able to wield technology as a superpower. So that's the mission behind JetLearn, right? How do we empower millions of kids with the foundational skills in technology and also start inspiring that at a young age, right? We talked about the power of inspiration. So how can we start inspiring them at a young age to think about global warming or space exploration or medical uh, advances, right? So how do we kind of plant that seed so over next 20, 30, even 40 years, they are the ones who will kind of move humankind forward.
Right. Yeah. And if you're spot on, I mean, there isn't anything today that I can think of that is not impacted by AI, either directly or indirectly. Right. Right from, let's say, very low skill jobs to very high skill jobs. Pretty much everything is directly, indirectly impacted by AI in some form or shape. Maybe some are seeing it today, some will see it in the next upcoming years. But yeah, you're right. And in the future, there will be a divide between, the people who are knowledgeable about AI versus people who do not want to be, and people who do not want to be knowledgeable about AI. I don't know what kind of future they will have. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's like being illiterate, right? You can't read or write, so that's not an option,
exactly
right?
exactly that is sort of the new literacy, or a unit of literacy, for lack of a better term, in the future world. Yeah. Yeah. So that's great, Abhishek. You describe how what led to the idea, your inspiration, and something that you have, and a very broad vision that you have about how you want to take this to teach young children, so that they can sustain the world. And great vision that I see, the great philosophy that I see, Abhishek. But I'm pretty sure you would have had some challenges right along the way. How had that right been when you started the company? The idea came into your mind. Uh,
Mhm.
what kind of challenges did you face?
Yeah, I think first is I would say was an I think the biggest was the internal challenge. Am I ready for this or not? Right. I think
Hmm.
that was probably the biggest challenge. There'll never be the perfect circumstances, right? Meaning I had a good job. Uh, my boss wanted me to stay there. I was, getting enough money and enough, let's say, stimulation, enough excitement. Everything was there, but there was all so for I would say more than a few years there was an internal struggle, right? I'm doing fine. I would probably take a big risk for a few years at least if I leave that path. And but but then I one part of me also believed that that I'm meant to do this what I'm doing right now. So I think the biggest part was in the internal struggle. Is it the right timing? Uh, and there was, how do I say, the loss aversion of having something good and then kind of giving it up. So I think
Hmm.
that was probably the biggest struggle
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
starting up.
Yeah, no, as I say, the right time is now.
Mhm. Yeah,
There is when the stars are not waiting to align. I mean, you would never know if that is real or not. So the right time is really
exactly,
now. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And you talk about the whole lack of, or the loss of aversion that you have, right? Because you're here, you were making good money, having a good life, good family, and at the same time, you also want to do something which is very meaningful, very impactful. Um, so why
Mhm.
education, and why an online learning platform? Did you have any competing thoughts, ideas in your mind?
Definitely. So education we kind of discussed, right? How I was kind of meant to do that. So so I would say two competing ideas which are broadly similar, but I would say the age group in the beginning was different, right?
Yeah.
One was about uh, similar skills, but for early career people, right? How could I help somebody who maybe has never studied programming during college, but who wants to become a data scientist or a cybersecurity expert, or uh, it's made sense. There was a business to be had, right? Probably the business model was more clear there. People were looking to recruit. There were a couple of other companies who had done something adjacent and succeeded also. But again, it came back to passion, right? And I would say the business opportunity also. First was, I strongly believe that you know, early childhood, again, the compounding effect of learning, right? The change in direction at an early age. So I think that was the pull towards this idea more, right? And I think also business sense wise, there's like, as I said, the 1.5 billion kids in school of school age right now in the world. And so the potential market was huge, right? We've just scratched the surface right now, but the potential market, both to make an impact as well as to build a big successful company, seemed much bigger in that space. So I think kind of that idea won out.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It's sort of like overlapping set theory, right? Going back to what makes the most impact to the community that you want to serve,
Yeah,
right? At the same time,
yeah,
it's also a very sound business model, right?
yeah.
Where you can sort of go.
And business model, what excites me, where I believe I have an advantage also given my background. So I think kind of the combination, and this seemed to be the best. thing. And after that, honestly, the grass is greener where you water more. So once you
Yeah,
pick one thing and start moving in that direction, good things can
yeah, yeah.
happen.
Abhishek, I just want to say that one more time, what you just said. A lot of time we hear that the grass is greener on the other side, but what you just said, it's so impactful, so meaningful that the grass is greener when you water it more, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to call out all the young people who are listening out now, that never think that the grass is green on the other side, and what if my friend is doing this, if I should also be doing this, right? The more you water, the grass will obviously be green, which means that you got to work harder at what you're doing, and it
Exactly.
will turn green. So wonderful. Abhishek, you talked about how you've been thinking about bridging the tech gap, all right, with the students. In your opinion, in your mind, where do you think AI, what role do you think AI has, what role do you think humans have in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
Hmm. Great. So see, it's interesting thing that you know a few competing things and few complementary things on how we are using AI. So firstly, we are teaching AI to very young learners, even as young as 8, 7, and going up to like high school kids. We use a lot of AI to personalize, to design our curriculum. Right, we teach about AI, but we also use a lot of AI in our content design. In how do we really personalize the approach for every learner, right? But there's a slight dichotomy here also. I also believe that the human touch, the inspiration, the role model that we talked about is very important, and no technology can replace it. So, so that there's a so that is something I strongly believe that in the next few decades, I think AI will be an important part, but it cannot replace a human, especially in areas where both knowledge and empathy both is required.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, I would probably consult an AI doctor, but I would never like fully trust all the empathy the an AI doctor. Similarly, a good teacher can has the power to inspire, to be a role model, right? Which a AI, let's say, tutor will not have, right? That being said, a good teacher can be made consistently great in every minute of the interaction by AI, by technology. So that's the approach, that's the strong belief we have, that AI is not replacing a talented human being, but it is increasing the impact of that talented human being. In our case, the talented human being is the teacher or the mentor.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting, interesting. So in your opinion, AI is really an enabler, right? Where human is still at the center of everything and anything that we do, and AI is enabling, making us more productive, more efficient, adding more
More
scale.
productive, more exactly, right? And you know, doing certain things that very, like for example,
Yeah. So you're talking about how you're about the future of AI that you see, and how you're using AI in your. So I'll just rephrase that question, Abhishek. So, so Abhishek, you spoke about how you chose AI, right? And you certainly see a future of AI. The way you have been thinking about AI is that it's an enabler for humans. It's not going to replace the human, right? So human is still the very center of everything and anything that we do. But AI is really enabling that human function, right? So that did I articulate it well, Abhishek? That your vision of what?
yeah, I would say that's the right way to look at least in some domains, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
the human touch is super important, where that ability to empathize, to inspire, to be a role model, that where that plays a very key role. uh, I think it's, humans cannot be replaced and should not be replaced, but uh, that human can be made as, let's say, superhuman by using AI.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That human can be a superhuman. Yeah. That's one great way of putting it. So, I mean, in terms of you are teaching AI to kids out there, and obviously, you have a larger vision of there's a very large marketplace out there. There's a lot of social impact that you're trying to create with this initiative, with JetLearn. Internally in the business function, you sort of touched upon it, but like dive down a little deeper on how are you using AI internally within your own company?
Great. So I think there are few uh, things where we are really leveraging AI, and I think we're still early in the journey, right? There's a lot more to be done. I think the first is personalization, right? So we have 4 or 5 thousand active learners right now, and every learner has a very, very personalized learning journey. So just to make it more tangible, I think we have 11 pairs of twins learning with us, and 4 or 5 of the twins are doing totally different things. Somebody's more creative, they're learning about web design, game design, how to use AI to make more, let's say, fun games. Somebody's more analytically oriented, they are doing data science, developing, fine tuning their own large language models, having fun with that, right? So so this personalization at scale is enabled by AI, right? So how do we capture data? Every learner, they have a different starting point. They have the different pace of learning. They have different interest. So you can learn the same thing, but what you kind of do as a project can be different, right? If somebody likes soccer, they can build an AI soccer game. If somebody likes Harry Potter, they can build something like a Harry Potter animation, while they're still practicing the same fundamental skills. So this personalization at scale is enabled by AI. I think this is uh, probably the biggest use. And then there's a lot of internal operations, right? We run 24/7 customer support, right? So a lot of that can be done by intelligent AI enabled chatbot. We also, on the other side, we also recruit and train and upskill a lot of mentors and teachers. So that whole, let's say, the teacher recruiting, training, upskilling, monitoring quality at scale, that is also enabled by AI.
Hmm. Okay. So it looks like there is significant number of use cases. Not only are you teaching AI to the kids, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of AI at practice that you are putting in terms of having that learning personalization experience,
Exactly.
using it internally within even your own operations,
Yeah.
right? Enabling people to sort of answer their own questions rather than waiting for someone, a human, to answer back, right? And that whole hiring process for and I'm sure there's some matchmaking as well, right? Between how do you pick a teacher? So if I'm a student, Abhishek, do I have the ability to pick a teacher, or that teacher automatically assigned?
So typically the teacher is automatically assigned. So again, that's where a lot of data and tech also comes into play, right? We have learners in 45, 46 countries. So we know what is the learning level more or less of each country. We we do a calibration session with the learner to understand their interest. There's the starting levels, right? Based on that, we have different teacher pools, and we assign a teacher from that pool, right? And then the whole learning journey, so we capture a lot of data points from every class, right? So the teacher, from the parent, from the learner, based on that, that learning journey is constantly refined.
Hmm. Hmm. And Abhishek, the language in terms of the learning, is the language generally English that you have, or are there other languages that I can? Example, I want to learn AI in, let's say, in a Tamil or a Telugu or French, German,
So
Spanish.
right now 90% of uh, our learners study in English. uh, since we are, probably the most relevant company in this domain in Europe, we are also doing some European languages, mainly Netherlands, in Dutch in Netherlands. That's where we started,
Right.
uh, and in French right now,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
primarily English, I think. And I think the world is moving in that direction, especially when it comes to tech and all. I think the language is code. So yeah, English
Yeah,
is
the language is good. Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
very young kids, yes, it helps to do it in the native language. But nowadays, most kids in the world are picking up English, or at least want to, right? They watch cartoons, they watch other stuff in English. So even if I'm surprised, sometimes parents think my kids don't know English, but they actually can understand English. This
Hmm.
happens
Yeah.
quite a bit in European countries for us.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard that a lot, especially at very young kids. I mean, do you see a world in, and this could be a hypothetical question, that in which, I'm a kid growing up in France, and there is this great teacher who specializes in students with special needs who can only teach in, let's say, German,
Mhm.
right? So, do you see that world in which JetLearn employs students and teachers who speak completely different languages, but the AI is doing the real time translation?
Interesting point. I've not thought about that yet. Could be a possibility. Uh, Not thought about that use case yet, right? So if the technology is ready and we can adapt it at some point, maybe that's a use case. Uh, but you've not thought about it. But that being said, I think you mentioned learners with special needs. So I just wanted to add a little bit there. So around 5 to 6% of our learners have special needs. They're neurodiverse with ADHD, with autism, right? And that is where the personalization also helps, right?
Hmm.
On one hand, we can support, you know, I would say somebody like a beginner like me also needs a tennis. If I want to learn tennis, I need a tennis coach. But Roger Federer also has a tennis coach, right? So in our model, in the highly personalized model, we are able to support the whole spectrum of learners, right? On one side, we have neurodiverse learners who maybe start off slow a bit, but then gain more confidence. On the other hand, we have learners who are participating in programming competitions, winning global hackathons, right? So that's where I think what we were discussing about AI, how AI can be used to personalize the learning journey, is super powerful.
Right, right. So that's great. But, I have had so many, being a parent of two daughters, right? I have realized it, and so many of my friends as well, that when we go, it's just mostly a cookie cutter approach, right? In many places, and the children are not really up to speed. So they go with a lot of interest and passion, but after a couple of days, I don't want to go. So to all the parents out there who are listening, I do want to call out that what Abhishek and JetLearn are offering here is a very personalized learning program. So you could have hypothetically in the same family two different children, one with ADHD and one who is exceptionally talented in coding
Mhm.
or in the new tech skills, and they could be twins for that matter, right, or similar age, and yet Abhishek and JetLearn are able to personalize for a neurodiverse student versus somebody who is academically brilliant, all right, or who really is into coding or data science, right? So two different learning experiences, they have their own path. So that is brilliant, Abhishek, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of AI involved in the kind of data that you're collecting that's helping you fine tune your AI. So have you seen, Abhishek, in terms of the AI that you're using in particular on the personalization? Because to me that looks like one of the biggest use cases that you have. How do you personalize learning content? How have you seen in terms of the performance of the AI, and the models that you are using? How have they progressed themselves in terms of their
Yes.
accuracy?
Yeah, good question. So I think this is still very early times, right? We are probably the one of the first ones who are actually using these
Hmm.
models. So I think there's so my take on this is, the core models are going to be a commodity, right? But it's like going to become like AWS. Everybody will use one or two of these, either Azure or AWS or Google Cloud. So there'll be 3 to 4 models. But then, how do you tune those models with ideally proprietary data? And some of that data will also need annotation by a human being, right? So I think that's where uh, uh, I think our strength also comes in, right? So since we have done hundreds of thousands of live classes. We have data from all of them, and most of those classes were also actually annotated by the teacher, by the learner's feedback, and periodic feedback from the parent also. So I think that makes this whole aspect very powerful, right? How do we really fine tune using that? Yeah, meaning one of those models, but how do we really fine tune using the data and aspects that we have with us already?
Hmm, hmm. That's excellent, excellent. So that this is beautiful, Sheikh. I like how you are not only teaching AI but also adopting AI in your own core business, which is the teaching part and the personalization. but also on the operations, right? Because a lot of time I see
Mhm.
startups or people who are very focused on the business or on the core part of the business, but not so much on the operations. But then you are a company that is doing both. You're using AI even on the operations side. You're not leaving it to be second or third grade, but you're focusing on the overall experience. That's very brilliant. So going back to your journey as an entrepreneur, right? The founding team that you had, the fundraising. So two aspects, right? Let's want to touch upon both. How did you go about setting up that initial team? You already had the idea, you had some thoughts about the business model and the market segment, but how did you go about setting up the team? That is one, and the second one is on the funding side.
Great questions. So I'll take the first question first. So as I was mentioning, I had this passion, and once I started getting momentum, I think good things started happening. One is, one of my class reps from IIT joined me as a co-founder. We had complementary strengths. I came more from the tech education background. He had a very strong background in consumer side of things, and we were developed so the go-to market in the B2C segment. So it was a good match, and so that's how we knew each other for nearly half our lives. So it was a good fit. That's how we kind of became the founders. And then once we were there, then we had a couple of really strong people join us in the founding team. Right? You mentioned operations are very strong, so we have somebody in operations who's worked at Unilever and headed like 5,000 people teams at Amazon. So we were starting to scale both in terms of number of learners uh, and both and teachers also. So I think having a very strong operational backbone became important. That's where again this person was also from our network. I think one thing I would want to mention: see, we are a company which is wants to make an impact, but we also on a mission. So, uh, so I think we are attracting people who have bought into the mission, right? So they're not just coming from money or to get that next career step. But at least the core team is super bought into the mission, right? And I think uh, this is required in what we are doing. The mission orientation is super important.
Yeah.
And if I have to, let's say, brag about my team, I think if you look at Trustpilot or Google reviews, we are the top rated education company globally in the world right now. We are the best rated, right? So all kudos to the team and how being a mission oriented company. I think the message here is having that mission orientation attracts the right people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. My previous podcast, was with Neeraj Rai, the founder of Sprouts AI, and one of the things that he mentioned was that as you bring the team, do they believe in your mission, the problem that you are trying to solve? They are they believers? Maybe they need to
Exactly.
be even more tougher believers, and then the whole thing start flowing in. So that's excellent, Abhishek. The way you have set up the team, Abhishek, your own leadership style, right? So I've known you for so long. So, but for our viewers out there, what does
Mhm.
your own leadership style look like? What typically goes on in your mind as you make decisions? I'm sure there have been last several years have been so many decisions that you have made. How
Yeah.
has that been?
So I think, to be very honest, it's still a journey. I think being an entrepreneur has been a lot about learning about myself, right? As we spoke in the beginning, right? I think the biggest struggle internal was also internal, right? Whether to start or continue on the path where you are posting, so to say, right? So in terms of leadership, also it's a lot about internal. There's so many decisions that one has to take with incomplete information. Uh, uh, you know, as a founder, sometimes it's very tough to let go of let's say at one point I have done almost everything with my hand.
Right.
So now I'm hiring people who are better than me, or at least should be. So what kind of space do I give them? uh, should I do some hand holding on in the beginning and then give them space? Is it the same for every executive that I hire, or is it different? So all these things are a learning experience and a calibration experience on every day. uh, I think where my style is kind of ending up is in the beginning. I want to make sure that, I think, as you mentioned, the vision should be aligned, right? Uh, and then not just throw somebody in the deep end, go figure it out, but kind of give that person comfort and a bit of rope as that person starts getting more into the system. They will probably bring skills from another environment, but we have our own culture, which is highly learner centric, highly customer centric. So how do we keep that balance? I think that is something that honestly I'm learning every day. It's about myself, what my style is, uh, and how it kind of aligns with the strengths and requirements of the person who I'm
Yep.
hiring.
Hmm. And yeah, what you just said, right? So you're planning for people's success, not just push them and ground, right? But while you're hiring people, you're of course making sure that you're planning for the success. Uh,
Yeah, as we are growing, I think, and also since just add one, we are a remote first setup, so and nearly 80% of our employees are women. So and that really helps with hiring great people. But then the challenge also becomes, how do you kind of bring everybody along in that culture, right? So
mm,
so that's also something that we're working on every day. How do we really align everybody, not just teamwork, but also how do we do right for the customer every time, right? Just like Amazon always says, customer is always right, right? So we are also that the learner. So our north star is the learner, right? Sometimes even the learner's parents may not know the right thing, but our focus is on doing the right for the learner. So that culture we need to imbibe in every hire, however senior or junior. So that's again something that we really work on every day.
right, right. And indeed, I think that's what makes you and JetLearn such a great learning platform, because for you, the front and center is always the learner, right? Come what may, you are basically working for the learner. On a lighter note, Abhishek, because this is a learning platform, so you might as well learn every single day, right? So you said you're learning every single day about your own leadership style and the way you're running the company. Uh, and I'm not surprised, because you're a learning company, so might as well learn yourself. Wonderful. So Abhishek, we'll switch gears again, and we'll talk now about some of the future things that you have in mind. What does the roadmap look like? Where do you think JetLearn would be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years?
Mhm. Great question. So I think the way I think our mission remains the same, right? How to make sure that kids and teens have this superpower of tech, of robotics, of AI, right? So that they can do game changing things in their future, right? We have just scratched the surface. The 1.5 billion kids in school, I think we have the right uh, culture, the right intellectual property to become the most impactful company in this space, right? Uh, so there are two major aspects, so to say, that we're working on, right? One is to scale our impact right now globally, basically more geographies. Right now, we are a really good brand in the UK, in Western Europe, right? We're looking to launch in the US, especially in California, in the coming weeks. Uh, but then the world is out there. We already get a lot of interest from Africa. We are being approached by African government leaders also, that how can we collaborate. So I think one aspect is our geographic expansion, right, to increase our impact. uh, and the second would be on the, how do we start using how do we start increasing our impact using more and more tech and AI also, right?
Mm,
Right, our core model, as we discussed, is live learning, right? I strongly believe in that power of live learning and that power of inspiration. So without But it also has an inherent constraint of having a human at the other end, right?
yeah.
So so that's where I think. But on the other hand, as we discussed, we have the data, we have some unique IP. So over time, I don't think it will happen right now, and it should not also. But over a few years, how can we develop somewhat of a hybrid model where the human becomes as is a very important factor, but we can scale more our impact using more and more, uh, let's say, AI enabled uh, teaching also.
Mhm. So does that mean that there's probably an AI who's teaching me or my children how to, let's say, write code in Python? Is that where you're headed?
See, I think that we still need to see where we end up there,
Hmm.
uh, but that's a possibility, right? That some of the basic stuff an AI will teach, and then when it comes to the real personalization, let's say, the the doubt clearing,
Hmm.
or uh, where that inspirational aspect is there, uh, then the human comes in. If something is super standard, that can be done by an AI, right? If you're learning about, how, yeah, I don't know, just start learning Python. What are loops and if statements? That probably an AI can do in a few years, as well as a human. I'm saying not compromising. But then the next level, okay, everybody learns slightly differently. The next level of teaching would be done by the human. So I think where we will end up going is somewhat of a hybrid model, right? Think about it as self-driving cars, right?
Yeah, right.
Right now there are very few real self-driving cars right now, but there are enough of these. Uh, First we started with human drivers with cruise control, right? That was the first level. Then it's like, you know it's an assistant to the driver. It's not like fully replacing the driver. Maybe in 10-20 years, there will be a significant part of cars will be self-driving, right? So
Hmm.
that's the direction we are also heading into.
Yeah, yeah. It's a gradual maturity model, right? As the more consumers or learners of the platform, they become tuned to maybe an AI bot teaching them, right? So maybe that becomes the future. But that's great. Geographical expansion. I certainly feel that, like you rightly said, there are so many people who do not have access to good learning systems or good schools. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for them with the availability of internet, 5G, great internet speeds, and the prices of data falling down so significantly. I'm
Okay,
pretty sure there's a lot of opportunities for you to make a very, very meaningful impact, Abhishek.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so you are a founder. You're sitting here, looking at. You're already creating a lot of impact, right? As I can tell from all the research that I have done about the company and the discussion that we're having. Um, so, what is some of the advice that you would have for entrepreneurs, or anybody young who's looking for inspiration? What kind of advice, or do this, do that, some kind of guidance would you have for them?
I would say a couple of things. One is, I think I'm just kind of probably will pick up something that we already discussed. First is, I would say, choose to work with a role model. If you can find a role model in your initial jobs, the initial roles that one takes, I think that is super inspirational. That will shape you a lot. So find the right person you would want to work with or work for in the beginning of your career. I think that will be a super im- impactful for anybody. I think the second is, uh, if one starts a company, it should not it sh- only be about the financial success. That will happen, but that is the side effect. Uh, the main effect has to be impact. If somebody starts only for financial success, I think if I use a mathematical number, I think the probability adjusted returns will be better in doing a corporate job in a bigger
Yeah,
company,
yeah.
right? So the wealth creation for the founder is a side effect of the impact one creates, and that to create that impact, I think passion about the problem is super important, because every day something new will happen, some new obstacle will come. So that having that passion that I'm going to solve this problem, I'm the best suited to solve this problem. This is my mission. I think that is super important.
Hmm. Hmm. No, that's great. Like, because what you said, purpose, having the right purpose, right? Otherwise, if you're only in it for the money, then that money can be earned anywhere.
Yeah.
But without the right purpose, nothing else matters. That's fantastic. So, Abhishek, that brings us toward the end of our podcast. So I really, really want to take a moment to thank you for all the wonderful insight that you have had. For all the parents, students, doesn't matter, who you are. If you're listening out there, here's a great platform for you to learn more about all the new things that are happening. The world is at that cusp now where the technological changes that are happening at a very, very rapid pace. And here's
Sure.
a platform that offers you the ability to learn more. Yeah, and if you're a parent of children who have any kind of disability, here is a platform that you can actually customize and personalize to suit the training needs of your children. So
Yeah.
thank you, Abhishek, for creating this wonderful, wonderful platform.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot, Arun, for inviting me. I think this was a very, very awesome conversation. If anybody who's listening to this podcast want to try out JetLearn, we do a free series of AI masterclasses, one every weekend. Please free to feel free to enroll for these free sessions, see how your kid enjoys it, and then yeah, I think
Yeah, no, that's great. Abhishek, what I'll do is at the bottom of this video, I'll include a link to JetLearn learning platform. So anyone out there who wants to try the platform, as Abhishek said, it's free. So thank you, Abhishek, for enabling that. So parents, you don't want to miss this, and children, you don't want to miss this. You certainly want to learn something from jetlearn.com, and I'll include that in the link. So Abhishek, really, really thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Arun. Have a great rest of your day.